He asked me to step aside, said this section was for immediate family only. He didn't yell. Didn't even look me in the eye. Just motioned with his hand, like I was in the way. What does it do to a man when his own blood forgets who he is, and strangers follow their lead? The sun hadn't climbed high yet, but the air already carried that dry southern weight, warm, quiet, and too still. I stood on the front porch in my pressed slacks and weathered dress shoes, both older than the boy who'd just slammed the door behind me. My duffel bag was by my feet. Light brown. Frayed at the corners. Same one I carried back from Desert Storm. Inside, I could still hear the clink of dishes. Tasha's voice rising and falling, directing the morning like a choir she didn't want me in. No one said happy birthday. Not Malcolm Jr., not her. They hadn't for years, but today it stung different. Maybe it was the way she stacked the pills on the table, mine, and slid them back toward me like they were no longer her concern. My name wasn't on the house deed, though I paid half the down payment. It wasn't on the checking account either, not since they offered to help manage things. But it was still on my army records. On my discharge papers. On that old coin I kept in my pocket, rubbed smooth from years of thumb presses in hard moments. They said it was about bills. About tough decisions. But the way Malcolm Jr. looked at me this morning, like I was less than, I knew it wasn't about money. It was about space. And I no longer had any in the place I called home. The coffee maker clicked on at exactly 6:45, just like it did every morning. Tasha had it programmed that way, said it saved time. The smell filled the kitchen before the sun even touched the back window. I sat at the far end of the table, where the chair legs didn't sit even, one slightly shorter than the rest. I never asked for it to be fixed. Across from me, Malcolm Jr. scrolled through his phone with one hand, the other resting on the table but never reaching for mine. A folded envelope with my name on it lay untouched beside my place setting. I hadn't opened it. Didn't have to. I already knew what it said. Another adjustment. Another policy change. Another thing they needed just to keep things smooth. The lights above buzzed faintly. One of the bulbs flickered every few seconds, casting a pulse over the counter where my medication tray sat in order, Monday to Sunday, color-coded by time of day. Tasha was good at that part. Organized. Efficient. But she never looked up when she placed them there. She didn't ask if I still needed them. She didn't ask if I slept. I had stopped carrying my wallet. There was nothing in it worth reaching for. My ID had expired months ago, but no one seemed to notice. Or care. Everything I needed went through Malcolm's account now, via copays, grocery cards, fuel for the car I rarely drove. He said it was easier that way. Centralized. Secure. He used words like that. Professional words. Not family words. My keys had disappeared from the hallway hook a few weeks back. I asked once. Tasha said, "Oh, we keep them now. In case of emergency." But no one ever told me what emergency I was part of. Some mornings, I would reach for the front door just to feel the knob. Just to remember how it turned. But lately, even that small movement earned a glance from the hallway. Not angry. Just watchful. Like I was a dog too close to the road. I started eating later. After they'd left for work. Cold eggs. Toast edges dried out from the air. I'd sit in silence, chewing slow, watching the birds fight over pieces of stale bread outside the window. It became routine. Not because I liked it, but because it was the one part of the day that didn't come with a form to sign or a conversation I didn't start. One afternoon, Tasha handed me a stack of mail and pointed to a paper she'd circled. "They need your signature by Friday," she said, then walked off. I turned the page over in my hand. It wasn't until I looked down that I noticed my name misspelled. 2 letters swapped. No one caught it. No one fixed it. I didn't correct them. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's just the only thing you have left when even your name stops belonging to you. The morning passed like any other, quiet, controlled, heavy in places no one could see. Tasha had taken the good car to work. Malcolm Jr. was in the back room with the door shut, typing loud and fast like he wanted someone to know he was busy. I stayed in the kitchen, wiping the counter that was already clean. The coffee pot was still warm, but I hadn't poured a cup. It was just before noon when he called me in. Not loud. Just enough to carry across the hallway. I walked slow, not from age, but because I knew something was coming. Something that had been circling for weeks, maybe longer. He stood by the dining table, arms crossed, a printed sheet in his hand. His voice had a practiced tone, like he was reading from memory. "Dad, this just isn't working anymore." Tasha didn't come out, but I could hear her upstairs, drawers opening, closing. Boxes being pulled down. Malcolm didn't look me in the eye until he said the next part. "You've got 30 minutes to pack." I looked down at the paper he was holding. It wasn't legal. Just typed words with bullet points. Things I cost them. Medications. Food. Stress. That was one of the items. My hand touched the side of the table. I kept it there to stay upright. I didn't ask questions. Didn't raise my voice. There's a kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from knowing no one would hear you anyway. I walked upstairs. My old room had turned into a half-office, half-storage space. A twin bed pushed against the wall, folded laundry that wasn't mine. I opened the closet. The clothes left were few, some slacks, 2 button-downs, a pair of shoes with soles worn thin at the heel. I folded what I could into a canvas duffel bag. The zipper caught on the edge, and I took my time with it. The bottom drawer of the nightstand held a shoebox. Inside, a photo from Okinawa, 2 folded flags, and a single unit coin I'd carried since '91. I slipped it into my right pocket without looking. When I came downstairs, they were both waiting. Malcolm held the front door open. Tasha leaned against the wall, arms crossed, not speaking. A bag of prescriptions sat on the floor near the entryway, already packed in a grocery sack. No one offered to carry anything. No one asked if I had somewhere to go. The sky outside had gone pale. Not cloudy, just dull, like the light was tired too. I walked to the car. The old one. The one with a window that didn't roll down on the driver's side. It started on the second try. I sat there a moment before shifting to reverse. From the porch, Tasha called out, almost like an afterthought. "Let us know when you figure things out." Then she turned and went back inside. I didn't respond. Just rested my hand on the steering wheel and pressed the coin in my pocket between 2 fingers. Smooth metal. Cool against my skin. A familiar weight in a world that suddenly had none. I drove slow, past the grocery store where I used to take Emmett for ice cream, past the park where I once ran drills on Sunday mornings. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I wasn't turning back. The parking lot behind him to Olive Baptist was mostly empty after sundown. A few trucks from the weekday crew stayed late some nights, but nobody parked where I did, far end, under the flickering street lamp that clicked twice before it went out. That corner stayed just dim enough to feel invisible, just quiet enough to hear the bugs in your own breath. I folded the driver's seat down partway, enough to ease the strain in my lower back. The old sedan creaked under me, its upholstery holding the smell of plastic and dust. I kept the duffel bag behind the seat. Didn't unpack. Just unzipped it far enough to pull out what I needed: a worn sweatshirt, a paper bag with my name written in permanent marker, 2 bottles of pills taped shut in a sandwich bag. I chewed each tablet slow, no water. Let them settle in their own time. Down the block, someone revved a motorcycle. Then silence again. I closed my eyes and pressed my thumb against the unit coin in my pocket. Didn't pull it out. Just needed the feel of it, flat, cool, still mine. Morning came soft. Not cold, but early light. Thin. The kind that made everything look a little more honest. I brushed my shirt with my palm, buttoned it clean, and walked to the front of the church where the volunteer pantry handed out coffee and stale danishes to whoever showed up first. The woman at the table smiled without asking questions. Just handed me a foam cup and a napkin with crumbs. Her name tag said Dolores. She didn't ask for mine. I sat near the edge of the steps, away from the line. Watched folks come and go. Some laughed. Others moved like their shoes weighed too much. Nobody looked long. That was the quiet agreement. No one stared too hard. No one asked why an old man in a tucked shirt was sipping coffee from a foam cup with his jacket zipped all the way up. When the line died down, I walked 2 blocks to the VA clinic. Didn't check in, just sat outside on the wooden bench beneath the window that rattled when the door opened. I kept my eyes low, hands folded, waiting like I was part of the building. At 10, the receptionist came out to change the trash. She saw me. Said nothing. Went back inside. I stayed an hour more. That afternoon, I sat in the back pew during an early memorial. Didn't know the name in the program, but I recognized 2 of the hymns. I didn't sing. Just read the words with my mouth closed. The man in front of me wore a blazer 2 sizes too large. His hair was combed back like mine used to be when Vanessa would smooth it down before church. I kept my hands in my lap. Let the music pass through me. When it ended, I stood outside the sanctuary doors for a while. No one noticed. That was fine. By sunset, I was back in the car. Same corner of the lot. Same street lamp. Still flickering. I didn't count the days. Didn't name them. Only kept track of gas. And distance from the house where my name had stopped meaning something. Sunday service had ended, but folks lingered near the front steps, trading hugs and folded bulletins. I stayed to the side, where the magnolia tree cast a thin shade over the bench. My coat was zipped to the collar, even though the day didn't ask for it. I hadn't spoken to anyone that morning. Didn't expect to. I was watching a group of young kids in choir robes chase each other around the handicap ramp when I heard the footsteps. Slower than most. Not hesitant, just careful. Measured. I didn't look up until the shadow crossed my lap. Staff Sergeant Rucker? His voice carried something I hadn't heard in a while. Not recognition, exactly. More like memory catching up to the present. I raised my eyes. He stood straight, mid-30s maybe, pressed slacks, dress shirt open at the neck. Trimmed beard. No name tag. No introductions. It's Jalen. Jalen Brooks. Lima Company. You probably don't remember. I remember, I said. He smiled, small and honest. The kind you give someone who saw you before the world told you what you were worth. I nodded toward the bench. He sat. For a while, neither of us spoke. Just listened to the church doors creak and close behind the last few stragglers. The wind tugged lightly at the edge of the program still in my hand. I saw you last week, he said finally. Didn't want to intrude. I looked straight ahead. Watched the flag at the corner gas station flutter against the pole. I wasn't sure it was you at first, he continued. But you walked the same. Slow, but grounded. I gave a quiet breath through my nose. Not quite a laugh. Used to try and match that walk, he added. Back when I still thought strength had a sound. He glanced down, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Slid it across the bench without flourish. No pitch. Just an offering. I work in digital security now. Corporate stuff mostly. But I still do pro bono work for veterans. Especially, folks dealing with guardianship issues. My fingers hovered over the card for a moment before picking it up. Thin cardstock. Matte finish. His name in clean block letters. The way a man would print it himself. You don't have to explain anything, he said, softer now. I've seen it happen more than you think. They call it protective management, but most of the time, it just means somebody else cashing your checks. I folded the card once, then again, and tucked it behind the coin in my pocket. Jalen stood up slowly. Smoothed the back of his pants. I'm around. If you need anything. Even just a ride to a real breakfast. He didn't shake my hand. Didn't offer to. Just gave a slight nod, like we were still under command protocol. I watched him walk away without turning. The bench stayed warm after he left. That evening, I drove to the edge of town and parked near the baseball field where the lights stayed on for practice. I didn't get out. Just sat still. One hand on the wheel. One thumb pressed to that folded card in my pocket. There are moments when a man's name comes back to him. Quiet. Unannounced. But whole. Monday morning came with overcast light and the low hum of traffic in the distance. I sat in the public library on 4th and Sycamore, second table from the window. The computers were free until noon. Jalen Brooks had texted earlier, short and steady, "I've got time if you do." I didn't reply, just showed up. He walked in wearing a windbreaker and carried a plain manila folder under his arm. No briefcase. No laptop. Just that folder and a sense of calm that didn't need explaining. He didn't start with questions. Just opened the folder and laid out 3 sheets of paper between us. One was a printout from the Social Security site. Another was from the VA. The third was a notarized form he'd drafted on his own time. Nothing dramatic. No courtroom language. Just clarity. Everything we're doing, he said, uses your name, your signature, your authority. I'm just helping you see where they buried it. I looked over the forms, let my eyes follow the lines even if my mind moved slower than usual. My fingers hovered over a pen he slid across the table. I didn't pick it up yet. Outside the window, a man walked by with a stroller. His daughter tossed goldfish crackers into the air like seeds. He didn't scold her. Just smiled, slow and tired. "I'm not asking for revenge," I said quietly. Jalen nodded. "You're asking for your seat back at your own table." The first form was a security request to the VA to change account access. The second was a request for credit monitoring, listing me as the only authorized point of contact. The third, most important, was a notice to revoke power of attorney, a document I'd signed years ago when Malcolm Rucker Jr. said it was for emergency planning. No one told me the emergency would be me. I signed the first two slowly. The third, I paused. Jalen didn't speak. Just waited, letting the space stay still. My hand tightened around the pen, then relaxed. I signed it. That sound, the scratch of ink on paper, was quieter than the rustle of his folder closing. Afterward, we drove across town in Jalen's car. His dashboard was clean, the air smelled like pine. No music played. He dropped me at the county clerk's office with a copy of everything in a brown envelope. "I'll wait in the lot," he said. "Just in case they give you grief." They didn't. The clerk asked for my ID. I gave her the expired one. She squinted at it, then stamped the forms anyway. By late afternoon, I sat outside the library again, same bench, the folder in my lap. For the first time in weeks, my name was printed alone on a document that meant something. I didn't call anyone. Didn't write. I just reached into my pocket, felt the edges of the unit coin, and held it between two fingers like I used to do on long deployments, when there was nothing else to trust but weight and metal and the fact that it was still there. Sometimes dignity doesn't return in a grand gesture. It comes one signature at a time. The letter came folded once and placed inside a plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name, in handwriting I recognized. Tasha Rucker. The corners of the envelope were creased, as if someone had debated mailing it. I didn't open it right away. Just left it on the table in the corner of the room I was now renting behind Mr. Franklin's bait shop. It sat there for 2 days, next to the small lamp with the pull chain that clicked once too loud. When I finally opened it, there wasn't much. 3 lines. We noticed some changes. Malcolm Rucker Jr. is having a hard time with the accounts. Please call us. We want to talk. There was no apology. No mention of the birthday. Or the day I left. No asking where I'd been sleeping or how I was doing. Just confusion that things weren't as convenient anymore. I folded the letter back and slid it into a drawer that didn't close right. That week, I walked to the small community arts center on Jameson Avenue. Nothing fancy. A converted firehouse with creaky floors and walls that smelled like old paper. They offered space for veterans to teach painting, woodworking, whatever we knew. I signed up for the Saturday morning drawing group. Free class. No requirements. The director gave me a stack of pencils, a few sketch pads, and a room with folding chairs. She asked what I'd like to be called. I told her just Mr. Rucker was fine. Only 2 kids showed up the first week. One of them was named Emmett. About 9. Quiet. Always looking around the room like he didn't trust silence. He didn't say much, but he drew with both hands. Left sketchbook open across his lap like he was holding something fragile. I never mentioned the military. Or where I lived. I just showed them how to find the lines in things. Where the shadows start, how to trace without pushing. How to press light enough that it still means something. Some Saturdays, we ran out of pencils. Some days, the lights buzzed louder than the kids talked. But they kept showing up. And so did I. One afternoon, after class, I walked to the bus stop and felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. Missed call. No message. The name on the screen was Malcolm Rucker Jr. I didn't press play. I let the screen go dark. Not out of anger. Just out of choice. Back in my room, I laid out the last sketch Emmett had handed me. He'd drawn a man sitting alone on a bench under a tree. No face. Just a silhouette, broad shoulders, hands resting still. Beside him, on the bench, was a coin. Round. Dark. Caught in a beam of light from above. No signature. No explanation. I looked at it for a long time before tucking it into the back of my Bible, between Psalm 34 and 46. Some things don't need answers. Just space to stay quiet and whole. It wasn't worth much. Worn at the edges. No shine left. I couldn't even tell which side had the eagle anymore. But I remember where I got it. That last morning. Before the door closed behind me and the world outside felt too quiet, like the air had taken a step back. Tasha had pressed it into my palm. No words. Just that. A single coin. I don't know if she meant for it to be all I'd have. Or if, in her own way, it was more than that. I kept it through the cold nights in the truck bed. Through the job fair where nobody made eye contact once they saw the military patch on my jacket. Through the VA office visit where the man behind the counter asked if I had anyone who could come speak for me. As if I hadn't spoken for this country already. Loud enough. Long enough. One Sunday afternoon, Emmett brought his cousin to the art class. A taller boy. Same eyes. Same quiet. The cousin didn't want to draw. Just watched. I let him. After class, Emmett waited while I cleaned up. He walked beside me all the way to the corner where I caught the bus. When I sat on the bench, he didn't leave. Just stood there. Then, softly, he asked if I was a soldier. I didn't answer at first. Then I nodded. Once. He didn't say anything else. Just took something from his pocket, a flat stone he'd painted. Blue, with a yellow line down the middle, and placed it beside me on the bench. Then he left. I held the coin in one hand. The painted rock in the other. Neither one made a sound. But somehow, together, they felt like enough. A few weeks later, the director at the center asked if I'd be willing to speak at the local school for Veterans Day. Nothing formal. Just talk. I said no. But that morning, I went anyway. I didn't say much. Just stood at the back of the gym, behind the folding chairs, while someone else read names. Kids fidgeted in their seats. Flags hung still above the bleachers. I never stepped forward. But before I left, I reached into my pocket and slid the coin onto the wooden ledge beneath the school's flagpole. No ceremony. No one saw. And I walked home with the painted rock in my coat. Not because one replaced the other. But because some weights we carry don't disappear. They just change hands, quietly. Sometimes, dignity is not restored with words, but with presence. Vernon Rucker never shouted. He never demanded anything. Yet through quiet endurance, nights spent in parking lots, mornings pretending to belong, and afternoons sitting beside a child who simply saw him, he reclaimed more than a home. He reclaimed his worth. When no one else stood beside him, a young soldier did. When the world forgot his birthday, a boy handed him a coin. And when silence became too loud to bear, the lot he once served gently echoed back in his favor. This story reminds us, a person's value isn't defined by who remembers them in comfort, but who sees them in struggle. And maybe that's a question we should all carry with us. Who are we willing to see when no one else is looking? If this story touched something in you, like a name whispered back after being forgotten, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Black Veteran Stories. There are more quiet voices like Vern's out there. Let's make sure they're never alone again.